Hi, I'm Liv. Over a period of time now, I have realized that knowledge management is amongst the longest human problem. So it's not just a corporate buzzword as we know it now, because it has been there for over a long period of time. Now, if you love real, authentic, and inspiring tales, then remember to subscribe to the channel. And I, as your comrade on this voyage of discovery into the world of Titans, I and my team will do our very best to deliver to you premium type content. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk. So over 8 years ago now, I moved into the Czech Republic. I grew up on the other side of knowledge. In a place when you grow in a certain place where information is scarce, knowledge, on the other hand, behaves differently. I grew up in a concept where knowledge is power, as that was how it was put together. And over time, I have learned to perceive things a little bit different. In my environment, my community, information is passed through orally from one person to another. Before there was a database, there was a grandmother telling a story. Before there was Wi-Fi, there was a story told twice to you so that you would not forget whatever that is. This is August, so our holidays look like, I saw a post one of the other days. The post was telling about how life used to look like in our August, like this is August, so it's school's closed, you go to visit your grandma in the village. You would cry, obviously, when you're leaving your place to go to the village because there's nothing that side. It wasn't necessarily different from the actual cities, but in the village it was much, much different. So you say you're angry to leave home to go there. You get to that place, you meet your grandma, so you're happy. Your dad leaves you, possibly if they took you that side, or you took a public transport. You get to the place. And few days later, some of your cousins reach, or maybe the cousins in the village reach, so the whole environment changes. You forget you're coming from a whole different place. Stories are told to you, nights, including boys and girls meeting over the fire. You do some dances, and then when it's story time, grandma calls you, all of you, you sit around the fire, and she would tell you stories. And these stories were learned to pass on information. Some stories were repeated deliberately so that to allow people not to forget. And if one person gets to learn that, then they pass on the information. This is the form in which information was passed. Somebody would call this primitive. I beg to differ. As Michael Polanyi says, your community knows more than they can tell. So the best at which things were known, because these were like practices, these were not actually written down. These were passed on. And if at any point certain information did not get passed on and the person dies, meaning that knowledge gets to die with that particular person. It's one of the shortcomings of that particular system. And now, my generation now works on, database and all this information that we're able to keep, and that completely works perfectly fine. As I would put it, that's like part of my story, and that's how it looked like. You go, cousins, and all that cool stuff that gets to happen. Then when it's time to leave, to go home, you see the Toyota Corolla comes through. Your dad has come to pick you up, or if it's the bus where you put all the items at the top, and you go back to the homes, and life begins again, the same cycle. The gap in that particular setting is information was left out. That's the problem of oral communication. As that information gets passed on, some concepts are not there in the vocabulary. Maintenance. There was a video that was going on. For instance, the word maintenance. I don't know what maintenance is in my vocabulary. In Jitonga, I don't know what that is. But we have the concept in Czech language, for instance. You have the concept in probably German language and all other places. But in our tradition, those concepts were missing. So that means if information is passed through and it's not written down in that particular formatting, you lose things in translation. Probably why there's lots of arguments about which Bible version works better and all that kind of stuff. I think it comes from the concept that some things might have been lost in translation. And if this did happen, that means part of some things were just refilled. And if somebody filled it with something else, somebody would argue what that is, what that means, and whether it's what was meant or not, and all that kind of stuff, because the people who were supposed to be telling those particular stories are way long gone. So they knew more than they could tell or they could write down. Hence Polanyi's, your community, the best of what your community knew, they couldn't tell as much. Now, our elderly folks worked on a principle that I would try to put in smaller terms, right? What I know now, there's data, there's information, there is knowledge, and then there's wisdom. Our elders worked in the wisdom tier. So data would be, for instance, because I come from Zambia, so farming is like the biggest stuff. I'm from the south side. And farming is our like a biggest thing. Data in that particular context would be 1 milliliter. What does that mean? You don't know. It's 1 milliliter of oil, 1 milliliter of water, 1 milliliter of some kind of a liquid. Information would be data with context. 1 milliliter of rainfall or 1 millimeter of rainfall last week. That is context. Knowledge would be a pattern plus experience. So you'll be saying, okay, we had that amount of rainfall. The pattern is it's not enough to plant, for instance. And then wisdom would be we have enough, but not enough to plant because the last time we did that, we had a bad harvest. That's wisdom. That is through judgment of the patterns and experiences that did happen. This was the concept of our elders. That's not primitive. That's a very sophisticated way of calculating things. I remember one of the concepts that we used is when I was very young and I couldn't read the analog timing. And time was literally my parents would have, the clocks and whatnot. They would buy this clock and put it on the wall. But because I couldn't read it, they taught it the concept of putting a stick into the ground and then you're able to follow the shed. And it's like if it's 12 o'clock, it really like the stick would not have shade in either ways because the sun would be way overhead. That was the concept, at least that at the time. And I would try to check it each and every hour to try and understand what that is. That was, anyway, by the way, the form of how I learned to read the analog wristwatch. That's why I like to wear one now. But I enjoy that because that's where it comes from. So it carries lots of memories and all that kind of stuff. So data is raw form, just a number, 1 millimeter. No information would be context, 1 millimeter of rainfall we had last week. And then knowledge would be a pattern and experience based off the things that you have seen several times. And wisdom would be the judgment on the pattern and experiences which you've had. That's the format of our elders. That's how they did it. Now, coming to our time and me trying to cement this. There's been a study that just emerged recently. And one of my guys did this particular study, John. So he published from the Socioeconomics Planning Science. It's by the university here in Prague. So the Zambian researcher, John, that I'm explaining to you. So they did this particular research and they did Southern African countries from 1991 to 2019. So they ran this particular study. Now, I wanted to take note of this. This happened 1991 to 2019. I was born in 1998 and I came to the Czech Republic in 2018. So this study is running through the whole time that I was home in Zambia. Then Zambia happens to be part of these Southern African countries where they were doing the study. These guys in the study are in my opinion, they looked more into knowledge management in disguise. However, they said they were studying inequalities in salaries, income rather. What they used is they used data from the World Bank, UNDP, and they used lots of machine learning items like cut boost, XG boost, gradient boosting, ADA boost. They used the traditional panel of econometrics. And then they used a tool called Sharp to make this model explain their predictions. And in their findings, in running the inequalities in income households in the Southern African country, they found that unemployment was the single most influential driver of income inequality across the continent, or in the southern part of the continent. So in as much as that was the case, how do we correlate that with labor? If there is unemployment, is there enough work that allows that, or there is not enough work that allows people to apply those particular skills? What is causing the unemployment? Is it lack of infrastructure for people to be involved in? Is it the lack of the skill set for people to apply all that stuff? And that was, the models that they were trying to find. The education paradox is one of the findings. So more years of schooling did not automatically reduce inequalities. A certificate that you would get, which is like now, and that's why you hear other entrepreneurs say, nah, school is not necessary and all that kind of stuff. It's because from the environment that we come from, just because you went to school does not guarantee that you're going to get the work, which makes complete sense. Getting a certification or an education in a certain field only is applicable if you have a place to apply these particular skills. So just because you have gone to school for so many years does not automatically guarantee that you're going to make more money than the person who didn't go to school. If they have the right information, the right infrastructure, the right resources, they would make more money than the person who has gone to do that. And that comes out into the concept of information and knowledge management. The idea that knowledge is power and whoever has it controls who eats, who doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. I grew in that concept and that was entirely true. However, I don't think that should be the way things should work. If knowledge is power, why hold on to it? Why don't we share it so that we're going to have more people involved into the growth of all these particular items and can be able to put them together? I think that's what makes more sense, because it's power, so let's pass it on so that we can get the most out of these particular things. Hence the concept of open source. Open source software allows you to all go, get this item, break it, improve it, and do all this particular kind of stuff. And you get the best version of whatever it is that you can get and, put it in an enterprise format and use it for your particular companies. Hence the term open source. So open sourcing things, I think, is the best way to go about it. I think it improves security, it improves transparency. You are able to test much of the stuff because you're dealing with the smartest people on your particular items that you get to grow. So when you start something, I think information has to be shared across the board. If you're starting a business and share the model of how you do that particular business. If it's a legit business, you're going to beat everybody into the market. Why? Because you can pass it on and let the best person, the best idea, the best concept get to win. And I think that's the direction which we should start or shifting to get to that and not hold on information as that is the particular case. Now, in the very study that my guy was working on, they did use some, obviously, machine learning, as I was saying, to be able to, tabulate all this stuff. So in as much as it is knowledge management, it's not only like human intelligence would do all this particular stuff. They had the help, obviously, this is the current generation that we're living. AI had to do much of the, mapping and being able to get the work quickly done for them to run the data from 1991 to 2019 to be able to assimilate that so that it's understandable and all that kind of stuff. So without that going, we need to know that in our current time, with the coming of AI, doesn't mean we have to rely everything on it. Management would be finding the balance in what we know. This is what we can feed the machine to get most of the stuff done, put it together, and that is the information that we could be able to share to the world. So finding a balance on how to work the two and merge them, that helps us to be able to get the most out of things, and like the opposite. So AI and the new equation, obviously, we should be able to include this and be able to make sure that knowledge is power, share it, as I did mention earlier. Much of what I wanted to share about this is we need to learn to be able to pass information across. I'm doing lots of things at the moment. I'm involved in lots of projects, and I am shifting from the part of saying knowledge is power, so hold on to it, and hierarchy, and because you have enough information, so it's only you who sits in this particular right part and whatnot. No, I grew up on the left side of the equation. Now I'm crossing over to the other side. So I grew up in this. I'm building for the other. I'm working in documentation. So you architect information from the source to who you're delivering the information to. What do you want the end user to really see what you're working on? Or what do you want them to do? Or what do they use your information for? You just don't put something out there. You're trying to put something that is relatable, that people could get and assimilate to get to be able to use that particular thing. So we shift from that particular model. Don't hoard information, give the information out. In lots of sectors, as I'm saying, the finance guys will tell you, we have the better deal for A, B, C, D, and whatnot. Okay, yes, you do have the better deal, but you can't say you're not getting paid from this and you're doing it for free. I think that is wrong. You are getting paid on a commission based off the product that you sell. So if you're selling a product, you want to be able to tell you're selling X, Y, Z product and not force people into getting into a particular direction and say, hey, you're trying to help them. No, you're not trying to help them. You are in business. You're working and we're trying to do business. We are in a partnership such that if I buy this particular product, you get a commission from that particular product, then we are both winning. So you give me the best deal possible, you get what you get over that particular deal, looking at the person's resources and the scarcity of those particular resources and how can they be able to manage from the little that they get to have. So if we can shift that, we're going to go and do things much, much brilliantly. Information around getting a mortgage, information about loans, information about money. You're going to say, yes, there's all books that are written and whatnot, but you've got to understand, not everybody learns the same way. Others learn through listening, others learn through reading, others learn through doing. So understanding all those particular levels in how you disseminate information, that allows people to be able to work effectively in all possible ways. So this is an important aspect that we need to understand on how we can channel the flow of information to be able to get the most of things done, especially to the young people. You need to be involved. You need to get into all these particular items. What you see on the internet would not be the actual stuff that is there every time. So I want you to focus, get back into the whole education system that we have. And the main point that I want you to remember after this whole thing is, let's shift from knowledge is power, so hoard it, to knowledge is power, so let's share it. So that most of us could be very woke, should learn what we need to do, and have the best community that we possibly can. And if we all have the information and the right information, quality information, and we can manage that, then we have something that we can pass on to the next generations and everybody who would be involved in this particular information. Let's learn, let's put it together and make it work. Tell me what way works best for you. I work better with doing, I work better with listening, I work better with visuals. That is why I'm doing this, and I'm passing it to you. Now, it's been lovely having you around and listening to all this stuff. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, cheers.